taking care of his estate plan just wasn't something that was at the forefront of his mind because he thought, listen, my kids are taken care of.
Yeah.
And then he passed away. And it created a giant mess because
Welcome to a Wiser Retirement Podcast. Are you curious about what estate planning error could hurt your family? I'm Shauna Theriel, and today I'm joined by estate planning attorney Arun Gupta. Each week, we bring you practical advice on retirement, investing, and planning for your financial future. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening. Let's get started. Good morning.
Good morning, Shauna. How are you?
Good. I'm glad we're doing this again.
Me too.
It's fun.
Me too.
I was asking you before, is there any fun? Because estate planning's fun. I'm sure you think it's fun.
It's exciting for me.
It is, exactly. I love estate planning. You and I have worked together for a long time, but is there any fun estate planning updates at all?
I don't know how exciting this is, but for some people, I'm sure it is exciting. The estate tax exemption was scheduled to be repealed to the pre-Trump 2016 levels, but that is officially not going to be repealed anymore, and the increase is now permanent.
As permanent as permanent is, right?
As permanent. Yes, exactly. A new Congress, a new president. Who knows what's going to happen? Yes. So the exemption is increased now. It's going to increase for inflation. Each year until they change it again. Until they change it again. That's
so
right.
it's 15 million
it's
next
50,
year.
Yes, it's 15. It
so
was.
It's still so
very
high.
Yes,
so.
it was 13.99 in 2025. It'll be 15 next year.
Okay.
And so on.
Okay, so that's really the only update. So nothing. I'm sure you'll keep us updated if there's other estate planning things out there. But thank you for that. Today, we're going to go through, we've already talked about trust and done a couple of things. We'll continue to do different estate planning shows together because we just love it. But today, we're going to talk about we're going to do a case study, really. And this is a real client situation that we have where a simple estate planning error costs money to the family, more or less the children. And it was something that was very simple that could have been avoided. And so just to bring awareness to individuals, and we looked at the stats before that maybe simple mistakes in an estate, they didn't give exact numbers. It's like, it's like how many, we're looking at how many unintended beneficiaries do things go to. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, but it was quite large. It seemed like it was a large amount. They didn't give exact numbers, I guess, because there's so many, different ways it could go. But, this is simple errors or things to look at that you could avoid hurting your family.
Yes. And they're simple things in the sense that, it can take 2 minutes to update,
right?
Literally 2 minutes. Some things can be a little bit more complicated, but generally speaking, a lot of the big impactful mistakes that happen, it hits a little harder because they were so easy to address when the time was right.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about Travis and his situation.
Yes. So we will. The names have been updated, but for confidentiality. But this is a real life example. Travis and Taylor. A married couple.
That has nothing to do with Travis and Taylor at all in the news right now, right?
They were married for about 20 years. They built a life together. They had 3 children. And as it happens with many marriages, it ended in divorce, and it was a very nasty divorce. And Travis, wanted to make sure that his, ex-spouse had nothing to do with his life anymore. Now, obviously, that's harder to do when you have kids, but he wanted to make sure that,
sure,
his kids were taken care of. And, after they got divorced, he updated his documents. He updated his will. He made sure that, upon his death, under his will, everything was going to go in trusts to his children. And it was in trust and not outright, also because he wanted to make sure that those assets were protected.
And that's subject to their divorce in the future if they have one, right?
Exactly.
Just given what he had gone through.
Yes. And, life goes on. Travis met someone new. We'll call her Sabrina. And they lived a somewhat lavish lifestyle. Sabrina needed Travis for support. He felt guilty and he had no interest in getting married again. But he felt guilty that, his girlfriend wasn't going to be provided for. And he got sick. And knowing that, something could happen to him, he wanted to make sure that she'd be taken care of. So he updated his life insurance policy and he put her as the beneficiary. And
so now you have a situation where the girlfriend, long-term girlfriend that they're obviously close, is supposed to get the life insurance, and then the kids are going to get the rest of the assets in trust.
That's right.
Okay,
that's right.
Through the will.
That's right. Correct. And fortunately, he recovered, and he thought that death may be imminent. Wasn't the time. He recovered, and then life goes on. Got caught up in new things, and taking care of his estate plan just wasn't something that was at the forefront of his mind, because he thought, listen, my kids are taken care of. And with this life insurance policy, he just never got around to updating that. He just never did.
Yeah.
And then he passed away, and it created a giant mess, because about 90% of his wealth was in retirement accounts. And retirement accounts pass via beneficiary designations. They're not going to pass through the terms of a will,
right,
unless you specifically put my estate on your beneficiary designation, or you just don't have one and then it defaults to the estate. In that situation, those assets would have gone through a will, but he never ended up changing his retirement account designations. He didn't have Sabrina on that. He had Taylor on his retirement account. His ex-wife. Yes. And, that's where most of the money ended up going. And he did have a life insurance policy, but he wasn't even with Sabrina when he died. Sabrina got the proceeds of the life insurance policy. He didn't own any real estate when he died. He lived in a condo that he was renting. His kids, they received the proceeds from his checking and savings accounts, and he didn't keep much in that. A lot of people don't do.
Yeah.
They don't do that. That's just not how they operate.
Right.
And his kids, everything was supposed to be, left in trust for them, protected, taken care of, and they barely had $10,000 split amongst the three of them.
Yeah.
And that is a massive unintended consequence, right? Now, generally speaking, when you have a will in the state of Georgia, and if you get divorced and you never get around to updating your will, that spouse is treated as if they were deceased. So they're basically, skipped over.
So in other words, if it says I'm a married person and this is my spouse, it's going to treat them as if you weren't married.
Yes,
right.
That's correct. But that's only going to apply to assets that are distributed through your will.
See, and that's such a good point. And most people don't realize that. Even when we meet with clients and we're explaining how things go, if you have beneficiary designations on any account, whether it's retirement account, life insurance, a brokerage account, even if you do like a payable on death at your bank, that's not going to your will.
No, it's not, unless
through the estate.
Correct. And especially when it comes to these custodians that set up these accounts, they don't want to stick their nose in it. There are protections in place for them to where they don't have to update things. They don't have to. They don't have to treat a spouse as if they were deceased. That beneficiary designation, 9 times out of 10, that's where it's going to go. Now, a certain custodian may have, protections in place within their, within their own, governing documents, but that's not that common. Most of the time, these custodians,
Totally.
they want to do the least amount of work and the least amount of liability.
Sure.
That's how they want to handle it.
But even still, they're not going to proactively reach out to you and say, do you want to change your beneficiaries when a life event happens?
Yes.
Unless you open like a new account and then it's on the application where it's like, add a beneficiary.
Yep.
And I have seen through employers
Yes.
where you do your annual, renewal of your benefits where it's like check your beneficiaries and you check off that they're still good. I've seen that before, where
and
it's
I think
like,
those are great when those policies are in place, because people have a million things to do, and sometimes just an automated reminder that you get through your HR to check something can make all the difference, right? But even with that, it's very easy to overlook, because again, it's on everyone's to-do list, and the deadline is until you die in a way, and that's not how you really want to view things, but technically that's the truth. But when you don't update it and the unthinkable happens, it can really create a mess.
Yeah.
And again, there could be future litigation involved, and people can try and undo but regardless, it's time.
There's no
stress,
estate
money.
to sue in that though, right? Because you're talking about its beneficiary designation, so it's not like you can hold up, and I don't know, I'm speaking out of turn. You're the attorney, but it's like, how can you sue an estate when the estate was checking accounts, right?
Listen,
that's it.
It's going to, no matter what, it's going to make life hard. Even if you try and unwind things and, say someone was unduly influenced or what have you, time, stress, money, guaranteed, it will suck all of those up, and again, unintended consequence, right? If Travis had updated his retirement accounts, right? This would have been different.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of times, through formal divorce proceedings, retirement accounts will be split through formal processes, right? But that's not always the case. And not only that, but the action rests on the person, right? You can get all the advice in the world, but if you're not signing that sheet of paper and submitting it, right? It's not going to happen.
Right.
And again, it's not a very complicated situation in terms of what he wanted.
A beneficiary
right?
change
It's a beneficiary change form. It's not high level estate taxes or anything like that. It's basically, I want my money to go to my kids. And I thought that I had that through my will, but I didn't realize that it doesn't all just go through your will.
And how could they? I mean, it's like they don't do this on a day-to-day basis.
Yes.
How do you know that it doesn't pass through the will just because it has a beneficiary? We know because that's been ingrained enough, obviously. And, if you're talking with your estate planning attorney, they will tell you, hopefully, to change this. And they could have in that situation. Or maybe he just did not or forgot or thought he had.
Yes.
I've talked to so many people that have said, oh, I know my beneficiaries are good. And I'm like, can you just promise me you're going to put your eyes on them? Because I have so many people say that and then they look and go, oh, it's not on there.
All the time. All the time. Yes.
I had that happen to a client recently where they had been married for 50 plus years and she was the beneficiary on everything. They had a revocable living trust, titled, everything was titled there. And she was the beneficiary on anything that wasn't in the revocable living trust, like a retirement account. And there was one account that was worth like $25,000, which is not insignificant, but it's so small compared to like everything else. And this poor woman spent days. She had to prove she was his spouse. You wouldn't believe the hoops that she had to jump through just to get access to these funds because there was no beneficiary. Maybe it had, to your point, maybe it had transferred from custodian to custodian, and at some point, it fell off.
Yeah.
We don't know why.
And I'm with you when it comes to this. It almost sounds like we're scolding people for not doing that. I feel that sometimes, but I hate it because this stuff, it's not easy. People have a million things going on. And honestly, it doesn't all make sense,
Right.
These are all complicated systems to navigate when you are busy doing so many other things. It is confusing. But, at the same time, it takes it takes a little bit of focus, a little bit of time to just check on it, right? And it's not like you have to do this, every single year, even though you probably can every few years, right?
Or definitely when you have a life change.
When there's a big life event, that's always the signal. Hey, I got a divorce, death, marriage, you win the lottery, etc. Just these big things that really impact the, financial outlook of your family, health, all of these things are signals to get this reviewed. And it is overwhelming. And, when I talk to my clients, I try and stress, listen, if you talk to me, you give me an hour, you've really done the work. Whatever's overwhelmed you, you've blurted it all out. And then it's the job of your attorney. And then you talk to your financial advisors and your accountants. They're here to help you and take care of the nitty gritty details of it. But you just got to tell them, right?
Yeah.
That's the hard part. But that is the work. Is just getting that initial meeting, just talking about these things with professionals.
Before we go back to the episode, did you just finalize a divorce or know someone who has? Download our post-divorce financial planning checklist, a free guide from Wiser Wealth Management. It covers everything from updating accounts to building your new financial future. Visit wiserinvestor.com/guides to get your free copy. All right, let's get back to the episode.
Yeah, and you can certainly do this on your own, just making sure that you know what to update, though.
Yes. There's definitely people who are capable of, and a lot of these, a beneficiary designation is not complicated. Most everybody can take care of that, right? It's not a super complicated trust or anything like that. It is something that people can take care of. But the overwhelming aspect of it, or just thinking that it all goes through your will, it's real,
Mm-hmm. Just know that there's multiple facets to it. That things may go through the will, but they may not. And, you just have to understand how it flows. And if you don't, then ask a professional or ask someone that you trust that knows the information fully. So that way you understand the movements of it.
Sure. And, even though, in the example that we talked about, that, there are unintended consequences, at least his kids were fine, generally speaking, in life, right? But that's not always the case, I've got plenty of clients that, everything looks perfect on paper, but, there could be a child that's going through something really difficult. And, the unintended small mistake ends up, really costing them.
Yeah.
And no one would want that. Right. Yeah. And it's tough, but it happens. It happens a lot.
Yeah. Well, and in that case, the mom's going to leave the kids, or already gave some of them, because it just happened to be their mom. But sometimes it's not. The ex-spouse is their mom too, and so in that case, it could work out. But it doesn't always work out like that.
No, and when money's on the line and feelings and hate are all involved, it can really throw a wrench in some things. A lot of times that my clients are highly emotional. Maybe it's siblings who've lost a parent, and they are getting super angry and upset about something when it has nothing to do with what they're actually talking about. It's because of an argument 30 years ago that they never got over.
Right.
And they use this as fuel. These things, they count. Yeah. They matter. And it really does have an effect on a lot of other people.
Oh, it always breaks my heart. I've been in situations, and you and I have been in situations together where, you're sitting across from a family and, the mom or dad or both are like, oh, well, my children would never fight and never, fight over this money. We have a really close relationship and, they would all work together, and then something happens and we bring the children to the table, and it's different than the parents probably expected a little bit when there's, maybe a little more rivalry, or the parents are gone and, they weren't really aware of, or just like you said, emotions changed for whatever reason, or they thought they were entitled to something because they got a gift here and they, they helped you so much here for your whole life. And now and fights can happen and they don't necessarily agree on them.
And all of the things that you're talking about right now they can all be addressed through your estate planning documents.
Yeah, if it's all in writing and it's black and white, then that's what governs. That's it. You know,
and it takes a lot of the fuel out when there's really nothing they can do about it, and it's laid out there the way you wanted it to be,
right?
Because at the end of the day, you are in control of this. You know, so these are very, very important things that it's easy to overlook, and it's understandable when it happens, but that doesn't change how unfortunate the results can be.
And I wanted to mention, you and I were talking earlier about that one client regarding the home titling. I feel like that happens quite often.
Yes.
I just want to talk about that because I think this applies to so many people.
Yes. And I think I may have mentioned this on a previous podcast with you too, but this happens quite a bit. You and your spouse own a home. You've lived in it for 40 years. You owned it jointly. The tax bill has both your names on it. All of your accounts are also titled jointly. You think, okay, there's not going to be probate necessary at the death of the first spouse. And this just happened with me. A client, her husband passed away, and everything was titled jointly. Most things defaulted to her. And she wanted to downsize after her husband passed away, and she purchased a new house, thinking that the sale of the old home, is going to, give her the down payment for the new home. And then they ran into a snafu because the deed on the home that they purchased in like 1987. It didn't have the survivorship language that is commonly used when most married couples purchase homes. It usually has joint tenants with right of survivorship. That's what most married couples,
it passes to
which
the
means
survivor
that
of one.
Yes, correct. At the death of the first spouse, it will default to the surviving spouse. But if it doesn't have that survivorship language, it's treated as tenants in common, which means when the first spouse dies, their 50% is distributed via their own estate planning documents, not defaulting to the spouse, meaning it has to go through probate. And the probate process, it can take a long time for no other reason that the court's got a lot going on, and something that their rubber stamping can take 2 months.
When you have a house sale,
and it creates it created a lot of, and it still is creating lots of financial stress, right?
Right.
When you think that things are just operating quickly, it's going to happen. And then all of a sudden you got this giant bill to pay and you don't have the funds. You don't have the funds to do it,
Yeah. So just because it's titled jointly, it may not be exactly.
Yes, that's correct. Just because it's joint doesn't mean it's with survivorship provisions, right? And not every state's like this, but Georgia, you'll have to have language in there that makes it clear that there's that survivorship.
So do you know what the I don't mean to put you on the spot. Do you know what the default is in Georgia now versus then, or has it always been?
So unless there's if that language isn't there, if it just says two people, and there's nothing else, the default is tenants in common.
Okay.
It's not survivorship.
Okay.
Certain other states will have, if you put married couple or if you put something like that, the default would be, but not here.
Okay. So how could a client or someone check that?
So check your deed. And if you can't check your deed, you can be a pretty creative internet sleuth, and I can almost promise you, if you really dig in, you'll probably be able to find it. But if you want someone else to do it, there's certainly people that you can pay that will look that up for you and just confirm what it says. And it's a very, very simple change. Let's say that it did not have those survivorship provisions in there. You just do a new deed that says that has that survivorship provision.
As long as you're both still alive.
Yes,
you
exactly.
Can't do it right.
Exactly. And then you record the deed, and that's it. It can be done very quickly.
Okay.
And I've had this happen with several clients. They can't find their deed, and they get really overwhelmed and they get scared. And I try and tell them, listen, that deed's probably recorded within the county. You don't actually most of the time, you don't actually need that original deed.
Yeah.
It'll be okay. There are records that reflect it.
Yeah.
And if you just want to, find your deed, I think that's a good thing to have. I think you should have, at least in your email, you want to just pull it up in a pinch. I think it's a good idea to have. And it's all scanned in. The Georgia has all of these, everything post like 1987.
I was going to say, if it's old, maybe not, right?
Yes, rarely nowadays it's rare where I can't find a deed online. Most of the time I can pretty much find everything online.
And so if you just bought a house recently in the last few years, is that part of your closing documents too?
Yeah, it should be.
Usually right? You get a copy of what is filed
when
with
you're
the court.
signing that giant stack of paper, one of those things is a deed.
Okay.
And then your real estate attorney they'll record
or make
it with
sure
the
you
county.
want it to be joint tenants rights survivorship.
Yes, of course. That's what I was going to say. You don't have to do it this way. Just make sure you know what it is and what you want. Maybe it's a second marriage and you don't want it to default to the surviving spouse. Maybe you do want it to go, equally to your spouse and your kids, or whatever your plan is, right?
Absolutely.
It really just all depends.
Yeah. So really, in summary, we are, making sure that we look at, first of all, we know what we want in our estate plan to flow.
Yes.
And then, and I always like to say, start with the end in mind. How do you want it to go?
Mm-hmm.
And then go backwards from there. Because it's like, okay, how do you want it to go? Well, then what assets go there? And then how should we title them, or how should our documents read to be able to make it go there?
Yes. Yes, exactly. I think that's knowing what you have, how it's titled. Are there designations on those? Those are very important things to do.
And then what do the documents say to do with them, and what documents tie to that asset too?
Yes.
Right.
Does it pass through your will, or does it pass via transfer on death? Does it pass via, an inherited IRA through a retirement account, your life insurance, anything with a death benefit, you want to make sure that you know what it says.
No, that's such good information. We appreciate you going over that with us in this case study. And, we came in at the end, unfortunately. And so there wasn't, once something is, when you come in at the end, you can't make changes.
Yeah, it breaks my heart sometimes when I see this. And again, there are people in place that will help guide you through these situations and try and make things as good as you can. Right.
Right.
And hopefully, in the future, hey, don't do this. So many times I have clients telling me I went through this with my parents, or I don't want to do this because that happened with them. Right. I feel like more and more and more people are dealing it with their parents, and they're going, okay, what do I need to do now to make sure I don't do this to my kids? Exactly.
Not that their parents purposely did it, but it's like, I feel like, the clients that we're seeing, so many, it's like, okay, I don't want to do it this way. I don't want to go through what I went through. Like my parents, even though they tried to leave it good. It's not like they were trying to, but it's like, how can I avoid this? And so it's almost by going through it themselves, unfortunately, with family members, then they can kind of see how it is. I think that almost gives them a preview, which is somewhat helpful.
Yes. Oh no, of course. And on the opposite side of that, I will have clients that really appreciate what their parents did by having everything so clean and organized and nice. And, I'll tell them, listen, this wasn't just a little thing that, your mom and dad did. They thought long and hard about this, and they made this as seamless and easy on you, so you didn't have to worry and stress.
Fair.
Every time parents are emotional or they're stressing out about these things, they're doing it for their kids. And their hard work and those tears, they are appreciated. Sometimes it takes a while for it to be appreciated, but it is.
Sure. Especially when you're grieving the loss of people, and then it's like you're going through and doing the paperwork and all of that. It's just if it can be in order as you intended, it just makes it easier for the family too.
Yes.
So I think most people want to do that. It's really, where we see a lot of these get caught is where maybe, something happened that wasn't planned, which is how life happens, right?
Course,
it's like an accident or like, something happened, that it wasn't imminent. Your death wasn't imminent. And so that's why it's important to make sure that everything's updated ongoing.
Yes.
Because a lot of time, something may happen and you just want to be prepared if the unthinkable happens.
Exactly. Yes.
Well, this is great. I appreciate you always coming and helping and working with our clients. We have a couple other episodes referenced in the show notes. Episode 295, What Happens If You Die Without a Will, The Legal Nightmare. Episode 279, what should parents of children with disabilities know about estate planning? Episode 233, how second marriages and blended families impact estate planning. We also have some educational videos in there, preventing family conflict with legacy planning and does inheritance count as income, which are helpful. And then, of course, we have Arun Gupta's link there if you want to reach out to him to talk about your estate planning needs. You can always, reach out to one of us too here to talk and do a consultation if you just want to do a review. But thanks for listening to today's episode. If you're interested in learning more about Wiser Wealth Management, or like I said, want to schedule a consultation, please go to wiserinvestor.com or click on the link in the episode notes. We will see you next week.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to a Wiser Retirement podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure to subscribe wherever you're listening. That way you don't miss any new episodes. We'd also appreciate if you could leave a rating and review. If you have any questions about anything that was discussed today, head to wiserinvestor.com and reach out. This podcast is strictly for informational purposes only and is not to be considered as investment advice or solicitation to buy or sell any financial products, securities, digital assets, or any other investment vehicles, or a basis to make any financial decisions. Wiser Wealth Management Incorporated is a registered investor advisor with the SEC. The host and/or guests may personally own securities, digital assets, or other investment vehicles mentioned on this podcast. Neither the host nor guests of the show are compensated for their participation, and no referral fees are paid to or received by any host or guest for clients, listeners, or similar interests. Investments involve risk, and unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Be sure to first consult with a qualified financial advisor, tax professional, insurance professional, and/or legal professional before implementing any strategy discussed herein. Past performance is not indicative of future performance.